First, it was one coming company. Now it appears to have left behind hundreds of gallons of toxic chemicals before it shut its doors for good. Now the Ohio and U.S. EPA is involved. Inspectors from both agencies converged on the shuttered factory today to find out what's inside those barrels. And that's where we find News 5's Jordan Vandenberg today. And Jordan, how many barrels are we talking about?
Well, there are a lot of them. According to state records, there are 120 of these 55-gallon barrels here at the back of this property on St. Clair in Euclid. Right now, the EPA says there doesn't appear to be a public safety threat, but they're working to figure out what is inside of those barrels. Amidst the weeds and rusted trailer, it looked as if EPA inspectors were navigating a minefield. Shannon Gibson and her husband stepped in it.
It's a nightmare. Like, we're really dealing with a nightmare right now on our hands.
They bought the property at a forfeited land sale late last year for $29,000. For more than a decade, a company called Ink Big used the expansive facility to make inks and protective coatings. Then the business soured. Tax payments and mortgage payments stopped, and the owners of the business apparently skirted their responsibilities, leaving behind more than 100 metal drums of unknown but potentially toxic chemicals.
We tried to contact the old owner of the property just, to get documentation on what's in the barrels, if he knew anything about them. We can't get in contact with them. Neither could the EPA, so they had to begin the painstaking process of cataloging each drum and testing for what's inside. The barrels have been on the property for nearly 2 years, and in that time, state records show many of them have begun to leak, spilling the potentially hazardous chemicals into the soil. While a majority of those chemicals remain unidentified, some have been, and it's not pretty. Combustible, harmful, toxic. To test 60 barrels, it's $33,000 without even getting the barrels removed. That's only to test 60 of them, and there's a little over 100 in the back.
Testing, removing, and then remediating the barrels could top 6 figures for a property that sold for a third of that. The Gibsons believe they walked into a minefield, and the previous owners were the ones who made it.
We're more of the type of people that, want to move forward, but how can you move forward with something this big? This is like a big loss.
We tried reaching out to the prior property owner, but our calls were not returned. Again, the EPA is emphasizing that there is not a public safety risk at this time, but they say right now their big priority, their main priority is stabilizing these drums in hopes of stopping those leaks, and then they can worry about how to get them out of here. Reporting live in Euclid, Jordan Vandenberg, News 5.